Demon's gonna have to try.
Yeah.
Jordan's principal is a child's first principal, named after Jordan River Anderson, a little boy with complex medical needs. He was from Norway House Cree Nation. For the first couple years of his life, his conditions required that he receive care in hospital. Jordan stayed at the Children's Hospital in Winnipeg. His family had relocated to be with him. After the first 2 years of his life, doctors felt that Jordan could finally return home to his family in Norway House. In order for anyone to leave the hospital, services and care must be coordinated by healthcare providers to ensure a patient will be properly cared for and will have all the services that one needs once they're out. All the arrangements were made for Jordan's services to be provided. He was ready to go home. Jordan didn't go home. There was a financial disagreement as to who would cover his services. And this was because Jordan was a status Indian child from on reserve. Had he been any other Manitoban from a town or city, his services would have been coordinated and covered, no questions asked. But because Jordan was a status Indian, there was contention as to who would pay for his services once discharged. This contention was between the federal and provincial governments. Healthcare coverage for First Nations people on reserve is considered a federal responsibility. Across Canada, each province is responsible for covering care and services for their citizens. Jordan was both a First Nations citizen and a Manitoban. But because of this dispute, Jordan had to remain in hospital while the governments pushed responsibility to each other. Jordan died at the age of 5, never having left the hospital. He never spent one day in his family home. Payment disputes within and between federal and provincial governments over services for First Nations children are not uncommon. First Nations children are frequently left waiting for services they desperately need. Many First Nations children are denied services that are available to other children. Both federal governments and provincial governments have narrowed the definition of Jordan's principle, so much so that there has been no child who has been considered eligible under that definition.
Regardless if you're in Winnipeg or if you're up in one of the reserves. But again, up in the reserves, you deal with even fewer supports and services, much more isolation than in the city. But again, don't want to take anything away from the First Nation families of the families who we interviewed in the city. It was an intensive experience for them. They do this parenting, and they talk about always feeling like they try to be the good parent, and they always feel like people judge them more because of having this child with a disability. They feel like they have to be, almost the perfect parent. They also experience this intense parenting. They do this with stigma associated. Having a child with a disability, having people stare at their child when they're taking their child out. So they do that. I also want to say for each family, each story is unique. While it's intense parenting, you can't say well, this is what this family needs based on this other family. It's every family is unique, and so they have unique needs, and so you can't say because this child has fetal alcohol syndrome, these are the only resources that you should be giving them based on this other family's experience. So it's a unique experiences with this intense parenting too. They do this at the cost of the other family members, the other children who don't have disabilities. This intense parenting, they have to take on multiple roles, from being like a teacher, teaching others about their child, to being a student, where they have to learn how to care for the child, learn how to understand their child with a disability. An advocate. This is really big. Like, they're doing all the advocating for the child. Very few other, which is great and shows the strength. But what about other people out there? To advocate for their child. Quite often, families would say, like, you do whatever you can. So you have these families where the parents, I should say, it involves a lot of work, intense parenting. Now, some of these things, some of the roles that families the parents have to assume, other parents do every day as well. Parents without children, with children without disabilities. But these parents have to do those roles, and it's intense. It's like twice the work that any other parent. Tense, and it's very extensive. So that's why I refer to it as intense parenting.
Kind of pretty hard for us, like for our son Junior. It's pretty hard for me, anyways. The way I look at him, and most of the things that hurts me is when he wants to play outside with other kids and he can't. Well, he tries to play with them, but he can't keep up with them.
They could build a center for disability children.
Yeah, to play with each other, like to have fun together. They should have that once in a while here, like to meet somewhere. That would be good.
I want to go play outside.
That place we were staying about next door to our mom's, the chief came over there and
They told us that they couldn't repair that house.
yeah, they couldn't repair it because it was condemned, and yeah, we didn't even have a ramp for I don't know how many months. I think almost a year. No? Year? Yeah. So,
It's hard giving him a bath. He keeps slipping.
Mom, Daddy.
Sometimes he bangs his head. He's slipping back.
How often do you have to go with him?
Every 6 months.
Every 6 months.
Well, he takes him out. They can't carry him. He's too heavy. I want to be there too, but they only want one escort. The doctors in Winnipeg in the genetics department, they wanted to do all these different biopsies just to learn his syndrome. At first I let it happen, and then this one time when he went for dental surgery, the genetics doctor came in and said, "Can you sign this paper?" And I said, "What is this for?" He said, "We're gonna do a bone, skin, liver again, piece of his kidney, piece of his heart tissue, for us to learn more of his syndrome and his outcome." And I said, "No way." I said, "No way, I'm not gonna let him go through that." I said, he'll be under anesthetic anyway, he won't know." And I said, "But you don't know him?" I said, "He's gonna be in pain," I said to them. And I said, "Just sign it." They were telling me. I said, "No way, I'm not gonna sign it." I said, "If you're gonna make me do that, I'm just gonna get him out of this hospital," I told them. I'm not gonna let you come and use him as a guinea pig. I said, he has a heart and he's breathing like me and you. I said, it's just, he's different from us. I said, but he has life and he has feelings too. I said, and then he said, but we have to do this. I said, well, I said, go do it to another child. I said, I'm not gonna let my son go through that. I said, and then I don't know, like a big tornado came that time. Then other doctors, head doctors and head nurses came of the hospital, and they were trying to persuade me to sign the papers. And then this other doctor, she was working with Dalton too since he was a baby, and she works with the doctors and supports them. And I stepped my foot down and I said, no way, I'm not doing this. I said, if you're not gonna do dental surgery on him, I said, fine with me, I'll just gonna leave. I said, and I'm not gonna bring him back. I said, if you're gonna make him do that, I said. And then they settled it. They took us into the room with the director of the hospital, children's hospital, and because I knew then it was a learning hospital, right? So I said, no, I'm not doing this. So it calmed down, the storm started calming down, and I said, I don't think I'm stupid. I said, I'm gonna look through all his body to see if you guys are gonna cut him up and stuff like that. So he went and had his dental surgery and they came to give me a hug and supported me, and they said, thank you for stepping your foot down. So he was like 14 at that time, and I said, I'm gonna let him live his life with no pain, and I just wanted him to have a normal life, I guess, without all that pain. He was 8, that children with lifelong medical complex need came into our lives for respite for him. It came in at a good time because I was like stressed and just hanging by a thread that time. And Dr. had said to me that time, he said, what if we put him in St. Lamont's home for a week or a few days just for you and your family to rest? And I said, no, I said, I don't think I can do that. I said, and he said, I know God will make a way. I said to him, and then he said, okay then. He said, so that next day I got a call from Thompson and said, I got a name, I record your name from one of the doctors in the city, and we're offering if you want respite for your son. They said, I said, what? He said, we're offering you respite for you and your husband, for someone to keep Dalton for you 4 hours a day. And I said, no way. I started crying. and then I said, yeah, I guess so. I said, he said, why are you crying? I said, because I was praying about it last night. I said, and I said, I know God is always near us. I said, he said, they can start today if they want. And I said, no way. So it was from there when he was 8 till he was 18. They took care of him. And then after he turned 18, the Norris Home Care took over. So I thank God for them. We went to Ottawa too in 2007 and for that Jordan Principle thing, and it was an awesome experience. Went through, like, going in that House of Commons, and when they gave us that standing ovation after the food went through, and my heart, I don't know, just started beating fast, knowing that other children in the whole nation was going to get help.
I think it's important to understand that there are differences for First Nations children versus all children, and then even greater depths of inequality for children who have got different needs within the First Nations population. And these inequalities arise because, unfortunately, provincial child welfare, health, and education laws have displaced some of the traditional First Nations laws. The federal government requires that they apply on reserve. But the federal government funds the services on reserve, whereas the provinces and territories fund it for all others. And what we have experienced as First Nations people, and has been validated by the government's own reports and by independent experts like the Auditor General of Canada, is that the federal government provides less funding for those services, even though the needs of the children are higher because of the multi-generational impacts of residential schools. When we have a disabled child, what we're finding is off reserve. There really aren't the types of supports that should be available to ensure their full participation and enjoyment in society. But those levels of support are even worse on reserve. And we hear repeated reports of families who are denied services that they would otherwise receive for their child because they're a First Nations person on reserve, or they're asked by the government to jump additional hoops when they're already going through the stress of caring for a child just to access the services. And that's where Jordan's principle comes into play.
We try our best to provide what we have in our community level. I know that we were fighting for a while already to get services that, like any other kid that lives off reserve, to get it. And she out of in the community, there's just little over 7,000 people in our community, and she's one of the 4 or 3 that's stupid in the community. And with her being like that, and the community not knowing that how to be stupid, I had to teach them how to do it, especially when she started school. Even the nurses, some of them didn't really know what a feeding button was, so I had to teach them. Well, I told them what it was and whatnot. We access all her feeding supplies through in Winnipeg here, and plus with her diapers and stuff, she gets it through here. She gets it through here in the community.
And so can you tell me a little bit about just going to school and everyday life in Norway House? How it's been for you, accessing services, that kind of thing? And you go to school out in Norway House?
Yeah.
Yes. And do you have brothers?
Yeah.
Brother that goes to Norway House School too?
Yeah.
Yeah?
She likes her dolls. She likes watching movies. Huh? Skippo carts with Auntie, yeah. Computers.
What are some of the services or communication methods that you use to help communication between you and Priscilla with others?
Because you can tell she made her own sign language. We don't know any sign language, but she made her own. and sometimes we can't understand what she's trying to say. Like we don't, and she'll, if she sees it on a picture or somewhere, she'll show us what she wants. But a lot of times sometimes we won't understand what she's trying to say. So we don't have any. We try. Hey.
Has there been any opportunities or services offered to you for such things such as sign language to yourselves as her family members or to Priscilla herself?
I know when the Nori House, they had a pilot project. It was the Children's Special Services. It was a pilot project, and under that program, there was a girl that come for sign language. But I went there, and then the girl probably came only 3 times, and then other than that, we never had any other offerings for those services for sign language or any communication. I know in the school they tried to make a communication board for her, but she she wasn't really into it to try. I remember one time when Priscilla was in the hospital and they kept talking about the tracheotomy for her, and I kept saying no. It was a nurse clinician that kept telling me because a doctor, respiratory doctor wanted her to have that trach. And I got so upset that I walked out of the rounds, and the social worker followed me, and I said to her, I don't know, beep, why the doctor keeps saying that, because he's never here and yet he wants her to have a trach. I said, I never seen that doctor. I said, and then next thing you know, that doctor showed up. Why are you always talking about that? You know I don't want her to have that. There's other ways, I told her. You know that there's other ways. I kept saying that to him. And that's why they used the CPAP machine rather than having her to have the trach. Because at that time she was weak and she wasn't able to sit up and do things on her own, because you had to do it for her in the hospital. So when we came home, I told them that I wanted to come home to Nori House. It was like living in a hospital with everything and everybody looking after her, and then coming home to nothing but me and my husband and the kids and our family. But it was better than having to live out there and not seeing everybody. It was practically like moving her hospital bed from the hospital to home, because we had all the machines and like a hospital room with her oxygen.
You had that here?
Everything in her house, yeah, in our house, at home.
Was that better than living in Winnipeg? Did you prefer that?
Yeah, that's what I always wanted to do, because we were in the hospital day in and day out from morning to night if we were there. And we were there most of the time, but we would come home maybe once a month to our other children. We had my parents were looking after them. Well, like any other parent, they want to put your child first, and like they say, the government should put any child first, because they are parents too, to help to access any kind of services that anybody can have within the community, not just off but on reserve also. It doesn't matter what kind of, if you're a First Nations member or not, you should get the services that are required within the home setting rather than having to move away.
Did you have to move away?
We did the first almost 10 months, first months of her life, she was in the hospital.
And was that just so you get access to services?
Yeah, while she was in the hospital, because she had trouble breathing and she wasn't able to feed on her own and things like that. She has respiratory problems. Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to add or say about anything this matter?
I don't think so. Priscilla, you want to say something?
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to say?
Mm-hmm.